one of the most talked about players in high school basketball history was Emoni Bates. People called him the 15-year-old Kevin Durant. His basketball skills were so amazing that LeBron James gave him advice after a game. I mean, LeBron was on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine when he was 17 years old, but Emoni did it when he was only 15. Like I said, he was supposed to be the future of the NBA. He wasn't even old enough to get a driver's license, but people thought he would go straight to the NBA and be picked first. Well, now Emoni Bates might not even make it to the NBA at all. What happened is really interesting, but it's also a warning to every other young player trying to make it to the pros. Bates was already famous when he was in 7th grade. He was 6 feet 7 inches tall when he was only 13 years old. Of course, he would beat every other 13-year-old on the planet, but by age 15, he learned how to dribble and shoot really well, which made people compare him to Kevin Durant. Bates became the first 10th grader ever to win the Gatorade Player of the Year award while he was playing at Lincoln High School. The excitement around him was so big that his dad wanted to take control. He created a school called Gypsy Prep that was all about his son. It had 12 students who were all teammates taking online classes in a rented building outside of town. They were all coached by Emoni's summer basketball coach and played against some of the best teams in the country. People called Emoni's dad the next LeVar Ball, which could be a good thing or a terrible thing, depending on who you ask. The really questionable choice was when Emoni decided to skip his senior year of high school. He was playing AAU basketball for the first time at 16 years old, and other players were starting to catch up to him. It looked like Emoni might have been a little too hyped up when he played against better competition than a kid named Yalin Duran passed him as the #1 recruit. He decided to skip senior year, so Emoni joined him at the same college, Memphis. The problem is, Emoni was 17 years old. You have to be 19 to enter the NBA draft. So while Yalin became a lottery pick after one semester, Emoni had to stay in school. And once he got to Memphis, it was obviously a mistake. The first warning sign was when they measured him. His hands were small. His arm span was 6 feet 7¼ inches. That's not good when you're 6 feet 9 inches tall. His vertical jump was 24½ inches. Tom Brady had a 24½ inch vertical jump, and pro scouts said he wasn't athletic enough for football. But fans were like, all right, this isn't a huge deal. Look, he's super skilled and he has time. Then the game started. Emoni averaged 7 points per game and shot terribly. He didn't make his teammates any better either. And look, I guess those numbers are okay for a 17-year-old in college, but not for someone who might be picked first in the NBA draft. The Tigers got off to a terrible 11-8 start when Emoni went down with a back injury, and people were like, oh yeah, typical. Obviously, he's going to quit the team. He's just going to leave when things get tough. But no, Emoni showed back up to support his guys who were doing great without him. Memphis became one of the best teams in the country without Emoni Bates. They only lost 2 games the rest of the year and made the NCAA tournament. Now, Emoni briefly came back in March Madness, but the year was a disaster. Emoni then quit school and announced he would transfer for his final year of college. But one report said he was actually kicked off the team. Rumors said Emoni told recruits not to go play for his coach Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Emoni probably blamed Penny for his struggles. I mean, he missed training camp and was just 17 years old. But Penny started him on day 1 anyway. But Imani had a list of 6 schools to transfer to, including some huge programs, but he chose Eastern Michigan. Yes, it gave him a chance to play back near home, but are we even sure any of those big schools wanted him? And the real question here is, what happened? How did a no doubt top pick fall to a second rounder at best? Imani still would have time to improve his draft position, but right now he's a long shot. I believe there are several people to blame. I will name them, but not Penny Hardaway. Yes, he played Imani quickly, but he was pressured after the number 1 player chose his school. I point the finger at anyone who compares a 15-year-old to Kevin Durant. I mean, even if a young kid is talented, those comparisons will kill his career. Anything he does will be looked at as a failure. Andrew Wiggins is a perfect example. Remember, he was compared to LeBron in college. Well, that stuck with him years into his NBA career. Instead of just appreciating what Andrew Wiggins brings to the game, everyone was like, well, you told me he would be the greatest of all time. Now imagine that happening to a 15-year-old kid on Sports Illustrated. I mean, maybe like at the barbershop, but not in the national media. Anything Imani did after that was a disappointment unless he actually was Kevin Durant. That's not fair. And it's a lot of pressure. One of the few guys that I've seen actually handle all this pressure was Zion Williamson, and even he is facing a lot of heat. The other person that comparison affected was Imani's dad, EJ. The spotlight went right to his head. He told Sports Illustrated, sometimes players just go with the flow, not really setting themselves up for generational wealth. Imani's in that position. I want to make sure he is in control with everything he does. Okay, dude, the words generational wealth should never be mentioned when your kid is 15 years old. Dad got dollar signs in his eyes, and right when things got tough in AAU basketball, he pulled his kid out of Lincoln and just created his own school. Then they skipped senior year, which set Imani up to fail at 17 years old. But this isn't all other people's fault. There are warning signs around Imani's attitude. I mean, the rumors about him getting kicked off Memphis aren't good. But in high school, a fight, he had got a lot of attention. A teammate named Jaden Akins got up in Imani's face on the court like teammates do, and the two had words, but instead of working it out, Gypsy Prep just kicked Akins off the team. The kid had to scramble to find another school before college, but people wondered if this was an example of Gypsy being so focused on just Imani that instead of dealing with problems, they just kick out anyone who causes trouble for Mr. Bates. Now, the good news is Imani is still expected to be an NBA player. He is picked in the early 2nd round by the Orlando Magic in ESPN's latest mock draft. That is amazing for any normal kid, but a nightmare for the so-called number 1 pick, though. I just hope that he can find a way to be grateful for the NBA dream. The worst example of an overhyped player falling from grace was Todd Merrill. His dad wanted Todd to be an NFL player so bad he started training him as a baby right out of the crib. Now, it worked at first. He became a star quarterback in high school and was recruited by every major college, but he chose his dad's old school, USC, and showed real promise. But he had behavior problems that led him to leave school early. Even then, the NFL drafted him in the 1st round, but only 2 years into his career, it was done after failing multiple drug tests. Todd is still a mess at 52 years old, and people wonder how much his childhood had to do with it. Now, I'm not saying Imani Bates is the next Todd Marinovich at all. My point is, nothing good happens when a super young player is cursed with Hall of Fame expectations. By the way, I mentioned Yalan Duran, who passed Amani in the high school rankings right before college. They both went to Memphis together. Thing. Duran just made himself a lottery pick. He went to the Detroit Pistons, and that's one of the reasons I gave Detroit an A in the draft. Check out the rest of my draft grades right here.